This is The Conversation. It's episode 182, Kysa Johnson, part 2, and I will honor that there are a few of you who did not listen to part 1 and you just found yourself at part 2. Maybe you didn't want to listen to the conversation around politics, the election, and so on, activism, and that's okay. You will find plenty to enjoy here, and you will not necessarily have needed to listen to part 1, although it would certainly help give you a little more context. I'm Michael Shaw. The website is still theconversationpod.com, and this time you can get a fresh load of images, including more of Kysa's subatomic decay pattern works, as well as her in her school portrait, if you will, at the Glasgow School of Art in the mid-90s. Her installing work, her studio last year in LA, studio shot, as well as her with her son when he was a baby, and more. So go check those out at the website. And so what do we talk about in part 2 that we didn't talk about in part 1? A lot of, to me, important things, from as relatively light to what it's like to not have a car in LA and taking a lot of car services and what that's like. It actually connects with one of my favorite topics, which is work and day jobs. And so we spend some time talking about that and the perception around what your day job is among artists is an interesting exchange. We talk about her time in Scotland, which she was quite fond of, and the idea of living there again potentially, and what it's been like to make the move from New York to LA, where she has been just for a couple of years, a little under a couple of years now. So that is all coming up. Just want to say before we get back in with part 2 that it really is challenging being a fundraiser as a small podcaster. As appreciative as I was and hopefully still am to those of you who have pitched in either on Patreon or PayPal. Things went very cold after last week, after about a week and a half ago. Things have grinded to a halt. So I just want to remind you that this is a listener-supported show, and you can support the show for as little as $1 a month on Patreon. And, you know, if enough people donate $1 or a couple dollars a month, that really does add up. So I encourage you, I would very much appreciate it if you can support the show. If not, for $1 or a few dollars a month on Patreon, you can make a one-time donation via PayPal. And just in case you didn't know, if you are a $20 one-time donation on PayPal or $3 a month or more via Patreon, you will be getting the bonus episodes, a couple and more coming. So, and you will be you'll be a big part of the family of support for this show. So thank you very much in advance. I will talk to you more on the back end. Let's jump into part 2 with Kysa Johnson. Talk to you then. Part 2.
Okay.
Here goes part 2. As we mentioned in passing earlier, you came from New York,
yes,
to Los Angeles a year and 3/4 ago.
Yeah.
And you left, correct me if I'm wrong, of course, not necessarily as a financial exodus, as has been the case with so many. It was a professional thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was when my husband wanting to leave New York thing is what it was, really.
When you were not quite ready.
Yeah, I mean, look, I learned so much through the process about myself and like things that are not good about myself necessarily, or I need to acknowledge in myself. Mm-hmm. One of which is my like great capacity for nostalgia, which is very big in my family. I grew up around New York. My dad lived on and off in Manhattan when I was growing up, and then all over the country. And I grew up in a suburb of New York, spent a lot of time going in there, and, you know, essentially grew up there partially. Mm-hmm. Went away to school in Glasgow, Scotland, which was amazing. Didn't want to leave. Loved it there. Never wanted to come back to America. Had to come back.
Because of your visa? Because
of my visa. I overstayed my visa. I got deported.
Wow.
So that was not a wise choice. I was a 20 2-year-old decision making thing.
Well, that didn't hurt you.
No, I wasn't allowed back for 2 years.
Oh, I see.
It was like went on as a like black mark on my record for a while and then disappeared. Okay. I mean, this is pre 9/11 and all that.
Right.
So moved back 99, was there until 2015 when we moved. And New York is amazing. I love New York. I love cities. I love people. I love public transportation. I like the energy there.
That's a not insignificant point, being that, as you alluded to, we should just clarify that you live in Los Angeles and you do not drive.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, I don't drive. I hate driving.
Did you have a traumatic experience at driver's ed, or what happened?
No, I never liked to drive. I got my license when I was 16. I never had a car. Everyone always had to chauffeur me around. I occasionally borrowed my mom's car and drove to my job at the mall and on nights and weekends, but that wasn't very far, and I hated every second of it.
Why do you think that is?
I don't, maybe I didn't do it enough to become comfortable. I'm a good driver. I'm a good driver, but I'm hyper aware of driving.
So when you're in the driver's seat, compared to your average driver, you're taking in 1.5 or 2 times as much information, and it's just overwhelming.
I'm skittish. And then I was in a car accident where someone ran a red light.
Okay, see, that says a lot right there.
Yeah. And I was driving my friend to pick up her car a block away from my mom's house, the week before I left for Glasgow to go to school, and this kid had his license for 3 days, plowed through a red light, straight into me, essentially, spun up onto someone's yard. Thank God it was a Volvo. The whole thing collapsed, around the frame. So we were fine. My whole left side was bruised and stuff, but we were okay, my friend and I. And it was funny, it was such a quick thing. It clearly was more traumatic than deep down than I experienced it as at the time. But then I went to Glasgow where I didn't drive. Then moved to New York where I didn't drive. I never kind of had to drive after that. So my last experience was this accident that was someone else's fault,
But
people have accidents all the time. It's
No. I was going in the other direction. Yeah. Because you said, it wasn't ultimately that big a deal, but traumas are traumas. And,
yeah, sure.
I mean, this is something that this other podcast talks about. It's not the event itself, it's how your feelings respond.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And that's what you have.
Yeah. I mean, every time I've driven, I let my license expire. Then I took driving lessons in New York 4 years ago and re-got my license. But leading up to that, the few times I drove in Connecticut where my mom lives, were so stressful that I would cry when I got to the parking lot because I'm on such high alert,
But you're a good passenger though I've driven with you. You're a good passenger. So it's not a problem when you're not in the driver's seat. Yeah.
Oh God, no. Yeah. No, I mean, sometimes I'm a little bit I'll react to things when I'm we're driving as a family. Which is terrible because then my husband's what's happening? And it's nothing to worry about. I'll just see someone coming up from the side or normal things that I'm overreacting to. I'm sure if I drove enough times that it counteracted that experience, it would be fine. Mm-hmm. But I just don't have the desire nor the practical need right now because of Lyft and Uber and buses and whatever.
And by the way, because you said Uber earlier in the conversation, and you tend to mean it in the generic car service sense.
I deleted Uber.
Okay, see, that's where I was going. Yeah. Do you want to talk about that for a second?
I mean, and it's funny because I actually realized I thought I deleted Uber and I didn't delete Uber.
But apparently, just to get to the end point first, apparently that
worked.
That Uber executive who was, I guess, asked on some kind of advisory committee for the new administration. Apparently, he backed out.
He did.
What I heard.
So it worked.
Oh, but that was after all these people deleted.
Yeah, I think it hit hundreds of thousands of people had deleted it and written in. You could when you delete it, you can give a reason and said, I in no way can support someone who's supporting Trump in any way, or So it worked. So he withdrew. And then a Disney executive also withdrew.
Bob Iger, I think it was.
Yeah. So like, that's heartening. Like things.
So now it's okay again to take a totally evil,
I know.
monopolistic car service again.
Well, no, but so then so many people switched to Lyft. And this is interesting because I had been taking Lyft for the most part anyway, because it allows you to put 2 destinations in, and I use it to pick up my daughter from daycare. So it saves me the like getting in the car and being like, it's going to be 2 stops. When we get to the first stop, I'll change the ad, blah, 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 which you have to do in Uber.
Right.
So I'd been taking Lyft for the most part anyway by that point. So they weren't getting that much of our money. But since everyone deleted Uber, whenever I need to go pick up my daughter, it's surging because so many people are using it. So I've had to like change my schedule. So I leave either like 15 minutes earlier or 15 minutes later, because it was just interesting to see like the economic impact of that like it had shifted where that now more people were demanding Lyft, and there's clearly, not as many drivers, and just the fallout, the financial, personal fallout
and
of that.
Does Lyft actually do rush hour surge charges?
It's not based on rush hour specifically. It's based on supply and demand. So, I mean, it falls into rush hour because that's a supply and demand situation. But yeah, they've always done surges. But I think they have a cap on it.
Got it.
So it goes like 25%, 50%. 75%, 100%. And you can watch it. Like now I know that like anytime before 3:45, it's fine. But hitting 3:45, it goes to 25%, and then it climbs upward, hits 100, sometimes 150, and then by like 4:18, it's back.
Now here's the thing, and sorry, listeners, if this is getting too much in the weeds, but no, we're going more into the weeds now.
Oh no!
Why not a cap? Good old fashioned cap.
Oh, because
how many different reasons? Price is number 1.
Price, reliability. So those 2. Yeah. Price and reliability.
But here's the thing that the other side would argue, which is that cab drivers are licensed. They have to go through very rigorous training and approval.
Yeah, sure.
And so on. And with car services, no.
Yeah,
not at all.
like it would be impossible for me not to drive in LA.
It's just financially impossible. Yeah. Right.
So that my fear of driving overcomes my union-based ethics, lefty self.
Right. Yeah. So, no, I totally.
Full disclosure.
Sure. I totally
hypocrisy
get that.
Right here.
No, I think you're speaking. Yeah, the reality too. I mean, it is a bit.
I mean, to be said, like the majority of drive share drivers that I talk to are like, love it. It gives them flexibility. They can like work when and how they want. They know, like when they make the most money, they can decide if that's when they want to drive.
So I'm glad you said that, because here's a question. So you take these things a lot.
Every
day.
Like,
you are a big car service consumer.
Yeah.
So are you actually hearing from them that what you just said? Because I've heard from people, I almost never take them, but what I've heard from some people is the drivers complain. I mean, first of all, it's hard to make enough money because X, Y, and Z.
I mean,
that's not what you're hearing.
That's not my experience.
Wow.
I've maybe heard, I'm going to say 10% of the people, and I'm like a talker. So I talk to 90% of the drivers for like a half hour.
Right.
No, the majority of people are very happy with it because it gives them flexibility.
Yeah.
A lot of them are making more money than the money they were making at their jobs. A lot of people are like, had a lot of drivers who are used to do valet. And now this is more like better for them financially. Wow. And like, it's kind of in the same like world. A lot of people who were like restaurant workers who, are now doing it. A lot of retirees who just wanted to get out of the house or like have kids in college, and this helps them support their kids in college. It's like they do it 4 hours a day or whatever. So a lot of people who are actors or musicians or creative people who like, You know
what I was going to ask you? Have you met any artists?
I've met maybe one artist. Not a lot.
I think there's a,
Artists
this is
don't drive.
this
I
is
don't know.
no. This is something that I've been thinking about too. And this is in relation to the new podcast. Actually, I think there's a lot of shame in the art world about what kind of day job you have.
Well,
there's a lot of judgment around car service people.
Yeah, which is so crazy to me because, like, whatever, like, that's an American thing too, which is super annoying. One of the things I find annoying about American culture is that
being a Glaswegian yourself.
Yes, because
right?
after 4 years, I'm officially a Scot. Oh my God, I would so go back. But that there's kind of, well, I mean, it's this. Like the classism of America, or this this the fake American dream that's not entirely fake, but like this idea that like if you just have a little like grit and get to it, you can be a millionaire. I mean, our system is not set up that way.
Fortunately, we don't hang around with those people.
No, yeah. So, but I think that's ingrained in our value system.
Right.
Someone wrote a great like op-ed piece right after the election, talking like, why did poor people vote for Trump? And it's, he's like, as a person who grew up, in poor immigrant in America, being told the American dream or whatever, to being poor in this country is perceived as your fault, and it's shameful. And everyone wants to be associated with the thing that's not shameful. Like, to be rich is to be good, and to be poor is to be bad. It didn't. It wasn't always that way, but like that's the modus operandi for like how we don't even know that we see things.
For all the rednecks that make up so much of this country.
Yeah. I mean, so unfortunately, jobs that are valuable are not valued. Like it takes all sorts to make a society. And like, dude, if you like to drive, like if you are enjoying driving, like what's wrong with that? Like, and a lot of people, at least
Absolutely.
that I've spoken to, have like,
and let's not forget that the thing that prompted this actually was not the larger American culture. It was the art world. Yeah. And I might be overstating this because maybe I'm...
Wait, the art world promoted...
No. It was that the art world is judgmental in terms of people's day jobs.
Okay,
yeah. And I could be overstating this, but I will say that a guest on this show in passing sort of made fun of people who drive Ubers, like, as if she would said, I would, somebody said, asked me if I was an Uber driver, like as if, it was that kind of thing.
Like whatever, people, I've had pilots driving me around. Like I've had, chemists from Pakistan, like, there's no, why is there a shame in that?
Yeah.
Like, whatever.
Why is there a shame in doing anything? I mean, as long as it works for you.
Totally.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like, it's a bizarre thing to me. Like, I mean, again, I think many of parts of our country, and maybe, within the contemporary art world too, like our value structure is thrown off. And especially in the contemporary art world, we're like, who makes a living? I mean, one of the things that has actually kind of made me, in my like kickiness, like stick with this crazy job, whatever it is.
Being an artist, you mean?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Is that in art school, the first thing that they told us, like the first day in Glasgow of that part of the program, was like 2% of you will actually go on to make any money doing this thing. So like, know that as you go through this system, like this is not an easy thing to do or to carry on with. So why are people looking down on artists who, like, most artists have to do something else to make money?
Right. But there are cool things to be doing as you're an artist making money, and things that are shameful to do.
But like, what is that? Who cares? Like, I don't know. That's just like misplaced thought. Like, why even bother thinking about it? I mean, I understand that there's things that people do strategically to try to network, to be a part of the world or whatever. And I feel like there's pros and cons to that way of thinking, and that can either hurt you or help you, I guess. I don't know, because you become perceived in a way, My experience has not been necessarily shamed for what I've done for work or day job. So like Catholic confession. Like, I haven't been ashamed of that.
Well, but it's actually, this is just sort of a weird retrospective thing that I'm going through in my head as far as organizing these things. But it's artists who don't have to work, whether because they're somehow supported otherwise or they actually are making a living. And I've had both kinds. Yeah. That they sort of, when they ask, so what's your day job? It's kind of, there's an inherent kind of condescension in that. I mean, like, you have to work. What is that like? That must suck. You know what I mean?
I mean, look, I had to have several other jobs until recently. And I also understand that I may again have to have several other jobs that like, and I've seen people go through that where like they were making a lot of money and they were like living off their art and then they weren't. And then
have you seen you seen the situations that I always imagine when the person who was making, good money from their art and then they weren't, they did not have like, some kind of easy go-to job that they had before?
Well, yes. And like, I'm, I don't know. I'm always thinking about like, because in New York, until a few years ago, I did fashion show production, which, it was like twice a year, Fashion Week. It was a bunch of other creative people that did this as their like money filler. And I loved it. It was like social, it was intense, it was not in the art world, but like with other interesting creative people. They wanted people to come do this who weren't fashion people because they weren't kind of in, starstruck or whatever. Like in the same way that like maybe it's better to have someone not in the art world, like selling, or an artist not selling art. I don't know. That's another, we don't need to go down that road. But anyway, what was my point? That that's not an option in Los Angeles. So like if I get to a point here where all of a sudden my well dries up, I'm like, what am I going to do? I don't know. I worked retail on and off throughout my life. I love retail. Maybe I'm going to like go work at some fancy store. I don't know. But like, I don't know. So that's interesting that you bring that up because my go-to is not available anymore.
And whatever modest fashion shows that they do have in LA are nothing that can employ nor pay the kind of thing.
As I understand it. Yeah.
Got it.
So to your point, do you think you've made good decisions in that like you have something that like as a stable go-to? No, you don't. Okay.
Hell no.
No. Okay. Well, that's interesting.
I'm gonna make all my living from a podcast that nobody donates to. Yeah, that's a great decision.
No, I mean, look, artists have not made good like security decisions in the first place.
True.
So I guess we all just have to live with that. And so to that point, like, why should it be a shameful thing to have another job? Like, we all knew that was the deal. I assume.
No, but like I said, just to make a fine point, it's not shameful to having a job as an artist. It's shameful to have which job.
Sorry.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I just think that's silly.
Sure. Good.
I mean,
you have good, solid Mormon values. Okay. So
Mormon values shining through. Now I'm going to go be a raging misogynist. Sorry, was that uncalled for? My anger is seeping through at the.
That's okay. Okay.
The system still.
You're allowed to vent here.
Yeah.
This is a safe place.
So many years later.
Right. Right.
But yeah.
Was it? I mean, Casey, if you forgive us for a second. When you listened to our conversation,
I was so interested in talking to him.
Were you? Well, is there anything you would like me to ask him in particular? Like if you had one?
No, I mean, well, it was interesting. He brought up Lane Twitchell, who I showed with at Christian's Gallery. Actually.
Okay.
So that was interesting to hear.
Right.
And I hadn't known he was Mormon till after I think the implosion of Roebling Hall, and that we had an interesting like Facebook. I had posted some like as an ex-Mormon thing, and he was like, "Oh my God, I'm an ex-Mormon too."
Right.
And at one of the groups, actually, at the first activist artist group that I went to, another girl, I posted another ex-Mormon thing when the Mormon Tabernacle Choir was confirmed to perform. And I got so mad.
Yeah.
Because they had been sort of like anti-Trump. And I was like, oh, well, at least the Mormons are like kind of, sticking to their professed values and whatever. And then I was like, fucking... And then there's the hypocrisy coming out again. So
you're preaching the converted there, aren't you? Yeah,
I know. Yeah. So, I was just interested, I was interested. One of the main things I was interested that Casey said in response to like how he was grappling with Mormonism and like what leaving would mean to him, and that like he would have no other, like it was either like Mormonism or like, just there is no God. Which I totally understand, because I would classify myself as someone like without God, not without meaning, but like, not like, an atheist is like atheist, like there's no God.
Right.
But I don't think that rejecting Mormonism necessarily has to have that ending. That it can be more open than that. And that was interesting to me that it wasn't for him. I think it took me like, 30 years or whatever to, where are we now? Yeah, like 30 years to maybe 25 years to get to that moment. But anyway, that was just interesting. Yeah. That it was like it's so binary. But Mormonism is very binary. So maybe we're kind of programmed that way.
Right. Right.
The way we think about things. Also, there's like a huge focus on perfection, and that can be debilitating. And I think that can also create a kind of like, if it's not perfect, then it's the worst, So,
right.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I do have to say, I was young enough to leave and and angry enough at that point, and it was so absurd to me. What they were telling me was like the afterlife and like what you were judged on and whatever, like made no sense. That I had already gotten to a point before I had kind of knew that I was rejecting it and like leaving it, that I was already kind of questioning the validity of some of the things I had taught to be true. So that it was a really easy transference to like not being a Mormon, because I was already picking and choosing, even as like a young teenager,
right,
what seemed like potentially true. If that makes any sense. I guess maybe like my foot was already half out the door.
Right.
That I was like, oh, maybe this is true, but maybe this is totally not true. And so to then just kind of reject it wholesale was easy, because I didn't have that much left to reject, I guess.
Right.
Anyway.
Well, we started back a while ago talking about your coming from New York out to the West Coast. Oh my God,
that took a turn. You should never have said I stayed on topic. Now,
no, it's okay, because I led us into those places. I mean, there are a number of different directions we could go. I guess sort of a big picture kind of thing is...
I remember what I was supposed to tell you.
Okay.
We moved because my husband was having a hard time living in New York, because he is very not, like, crowds are hard for him.
Right.
And he had to commute through Times Square every day, twice a day, like an hour and a half commute from Jackson Heights, where we were living.
Right.
And his work has two main offices, and one is Los Angeles. And so it was a very easy transfer. Well,
you can tell your husband that I had a not dissimilar experience when I lived in New York. It wasn't the subway on its own, but it was. I mean, I certainly one of the symptoms was being on the 4 train. Anywhere between 5 and 7. And
smushed up against.
But that's just right. But that's just sort of an easy go-to to sort of describe
all the larger.
Being crowded, feeling crowded all the time, and not being a rich person,
absolutely.
having the resources to get away as much as you need to, right? So all that to say that I identify, but we could spend a whole another hour talking about New York versus LA, or how your transition has been and so on. But maybe we should sort of leap to something a little more specific. Well, I mean, maybe just the short question is, do you feel like you're in a new home, I guess?
Yeah, absolutely.
Despite the lack of public transportation.
Yeah, but I take the bus every morning. I love the bus. The bus is amazing. Like, everyone should have to take the bus in their life.
Right. Because that's like the true equalizer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're like, and it's, everyone's on the, like, it's, people, I've heard people before I moved to LA, they're like, you can't take the bus. Nobody takes the bus. The bus is full. People take the bus all the time.
Yeah.
In every neighborhood.
Yeah.
People take the bus.
They take the expo too.
Yeah. And it's an equalizer. Yeah. And people are so nice to each other.
Wow.
So you're like sharing.
And that's a little different than New York, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I always loved the subway. You don't get the yelly people like you do on the subway. Like, where you're like, oh, here's the, like, there was a guy on the L train for a while that would get on, like, at the Graham stop, and he had this, like, spiel that was like, he would be like, really just basically, I'm trying to do this, because really just basically, it would be like, oh my God, there's a really just basically guy. So you don't have that. I mean, there have been times that the bus that I take goes down Skid Row. So you do get, like, sometimes people are, like, talking to themselves and you feel like they could flip, but that's not the norm. No, people are just, like, polite. They help each other with what bus stop to get off. Like, I don't know. It's just like everyone knows they're in the same space together, traveling to in a common way. And so people are respectful.
I want to switch gears here for a second, because it's still a New York LA comparison, but I was talking with an artist not on the podcast the other day, and she was saying that, because we both had lived in New York at some point before, that there were more opportunities for artists there. And I'm wondering if you're...
I guess it depends on what kind of opportunity you're talking
Gallery
about.
opportunities.
Gallery opportunities. Yeah. I mean, there's more galleries.
Yeah.
I feel like there's more opportunity for community here, and part of that is, like, small artist-run gallery spaces that there seem to be a lot of here that are more in a, like, let's show work way than a, like, let's make money way, because there is less overhead.
Right.
I'm having the same experience here that I had in Glasgow, which is a great thing, which I kind of was always looking for in New York, and I think it's because of a market question that, like, Glasgow was outside of London, which was the main market hub. It was the home of, like, a great art school and very close to several other great art schools. So it was like a cauldron of, people who were artists or becoming artists.
You didn't happen to meet the people from Franz Ferdinand by any chance?
I
when you were
did.
There? Did you?
Well,
How did I know that?
Okay, how did you know that?
I was thinking about it. I was thinking, because that guy travels in the art crowd, the lead singer, right?
So my a friend of mine ran the space in Glasgow called the Chateau Gatto for a while after I had left.
Not to be confused with LA's Chateau.
No, it's just Chateau Gatto. And when I was here, he had become friends with the Franz Ferdinand guys because they had gone to art school. So they were like, he was younger than me. And they were coming to New York to perform. And he was like, hey, my friends are coming. Let me get you on the list for this, like, showcase they're doing. So I met them in New York, actually.
Right. How was the show?
It was great. Oh, it was like such a new sound. Belle and Sebastian were also there when I was there. And that's who my best girlfriend was roommates with Richard, the drummer. So, like, I kind of knew them more than Franz Ferdinand.
The odds of hanging out, being friends with rock stars, are much better in Scotland than they are in here.
Well, yeah. Well, that was the moment too when, like, Britpop was transitioning. It was a really great moment for Glasgow. There was, like, tons of stuff going on in the music scene. Mm-hmm. There was, tons of things. Like, it was, like, right before everyone from Glasgow started winning the Turner Prize. It was like all of this great stuff was already all starting to happen in Glasgow. It was this sort of, like, cauldron of possibility. And Yeah, so there was a lot of, and in Britain especially, there's this huge like art school band thing that happens, that like so many musicians start off at art school and become friends, and then they decide not to do art but to be in a band, and they hit it big, and they kind of know how to like present themselves, and they become this
Why do
full
you think it
package.
is that per capita
Yeah.
the musicians are so much better in the UK?
Oh my God. I mean, I said like the artists are also better.
Is it because of
in the UK.
Is it because of the weather, or
I think it's a lot of things. I mean, I think that it's a valued part of. I think culture in general is
more
valued
important. Yeah.
more there in all facets:
Right.
music, fine art. Or I should say, the visual arts,
Right.
theater, literature. These are all things considered important, separate to money. They don't have the same obsession with. They have an obsession with class, but they don't have an obsession with money. So that's part of it, I think. I think it also could be the weather. I mean, to be honest, like
especially Scotland, right?
yeah, like moody. Like you need weather to like react to in your mood, so it creates like a more leveled emotional experience, I would say. The Scots especially, I mean the Brits in general have an amazing sense of humor and self-depreciating humor. The Scots 100% funniest people ever, most delightful people. They show their love through taking the piss out of you, which just means to like make fun of you all the time, which took me like 2 months to understand. I was like, why are my friends so mean to me all the time? Like they want to hang out with me, but they're just like so mean.
Right,
and I was like,
right.
oh no, it's just like love. And nobody takes themselves too seriously. So like nothing is too precious, I think. And
See, you just articulated why I have now banned the P word from this show.
oh, precious or
No,
practice?
practice.
Oh
yeah.
totally.
Because that's one of my big, and I think I swore off that I would never talk about it after the last episode, but it's just to let people know that that's another reason why I have a problem with the noun practice as in my
Right.
practice, because it is precious and it doesn't have a sense of humor at all.
Yeah, no. Well, and that is what is so great about Scotland is like the sense of humor is
So important.
so important.
Yeah.
You know, and like, and then also in Britain in general, there's like a real love of like argument with an understanding for being able to take many sides.
Right.
Which allows you to perceive the world in many different ways.
Right.
Which allows you to create a more like leveled creative experience to give to the world.
So are your
wanna go back to
Scottish
Glasgow.
friends are your Scottish friends sympathizing with the other side that is leading to this new world?
Oh my God! I mean, they're like, what? Two of my British friends called me the night of the election to
That was
be
sweet.
like, Kysa,
To console you?
yeah, or just to be like, oh my God, like Brexit was bad enough, but we were hoping at least that like that would be a canary in the coal mine. And I kept saying that, oh no, because Brexit happened. Like people will be like, no, we can't let this happen. And Rob, my husband, was like, Americans don't pay attention to the rest of the world. Like,
Yeah.
the Americans that are making decisions, the masses of America aren't looking to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, people are like, are you okay? I mean, but now that like Brexit is resurfacing again as a like, how is it going to happen? Is it going to be a hard Brexit? They're starting to talk about like deporting people with, already, like they're having a very parallel experience to us.
Yeah.
In a smaller way, because it's a smaller country and has a smaller world impact. And, also lesson in history, the British Empire, Brexit's the like full tail end of that arc of history,
So I'm going to assume that, even though you didn't explicitly say it, I think I know it's true, that if your husband was willing and you could somehow do it, you would go back to Glasgow, right, and live there. So what would it what
I
on a
say
practical?
That, but I don't know if
you're
that's
being
a real-
facetious. Okay.
No, I'm not being facetious. I just say that as a like blue sky thing, but
Right.
then like to talk about it. Let's say that I would, but maybe I'm loving LA so much that I wouldn't want to do it right now.
Interesting. Wow.
I would do it in like, like maybe when my son hits middle school or something.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What is it that you're loving about LA?
The
weather?
No, not the weather.
Okay.
No. The weather's the worst part.
Wow. How counterintuitive.
I don't like the sun. I like the sun in like
doses.
But I like moody gray.
Well,
weather.
we had a nice dose of rain.
Really good dose of rain, which has been great. But in LA, at least in our house, we don't have central heating. So, like, you don't get one of the great parts of, like, moody, cold weather, which is to be warm inside while it's cold outside.
Yeah.
So I'm just, like, cold everywhere.
Yep.
So that's not fun.
Me too.
Yeah, right? It's like, at least give me the, like, coziness.
Yeah.
And this is circling back finally to what I was going to say about loving Glasgow and looking for that I had in Glasgow, which was this great experience of this being in a city that wasn't market centric, that had a great supply of artists and creative people. And it was this amazing communal experience of art making. And what takes precedent, or did when I was there, it may have changed as, you know, it's become more of a market there, that art making was king. Like, that is what being an artist was about. It was about making something and kind of being valued for your ideas and your creations and not your pecking order in the gallery system, or if you were making a living as an artist or whatever. It was like, what are you making? And is it good? You know? I found that more here, because I think there's not as much of a market, and there's so many great art schools, and there's, you know, it's a smaller community than New York. And so it's easier to kind of create, networks. To put a, like, boundary around that, I'm also coming from a place where I had a kind of like become complacent in New York, where I wasn't going out and seeking things in the way that maybe I did in my 20s when I had first come back. But being here has forced me into that situation again, where you're like, I have to go seek my community because I don't have a community yet. So I'm more proactive by necessity, and it made me realize that I kind of stopped being proactive in a real way in New York. So it's been a richer experience maybe for me than the last few years of New York had been, because I kind of just been like, oh, I have my friends and I have my gallery and I have, you know, I went to the studio, I did my work. I didn't make such an effort to be a larger part of the community. I mean, I had kids, so that young kids, that made it harder.
Right.
Yeah.
So you got pushed out of your comfort zone.
Yes. Which is great.
Things taken away.
Yes.
Had to add them, right?
Yeah, it's good.
Right.
Destabilization, it can be good, maybe, if you do the right things with it.
Right. But, and here's something that I think is, you will see what you have to say about it, as far as speaking to a myth about geography in terms of your art making.
Yeah.
Which is, you know, that one of the old cliches is like, you know, you go to, especially for painters, you go to California and the paintings change because the light's so different.
I mean, maybe if you're a landscape painter.
Right. No, so the whole point that I was getting to is that, you know, you were making your work there and you're making your work here now. And it's basically different location, but, you know, same direction.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for my work specifically, I mean, God, I did the same annoying thing when I was pregnant, where it was like, oh, when you have babies, your work's gonna
you're gonna make
this whole new
paintings
thing.
Of pregnant ladies,
or like babies. Like, I'm not gonna start drawing babies because I had a baby. It's like, I'm not gonna like start drawing pictures of like boots because I gotta do it. No, it's not to compare babies to boots, but like, that's so not a function of maybe if I were a portrait painter, maybe if my work had been, you know, focused on like my personal life, you know,
right.
But my work has always, since school, been focused on, you know, natural patterns that are microscopic and macroscopic and available through science, patterns in history, patterns in belief systems that kind of like mirror physical processes, like things to me that were that are bigger. I've always consciously, or just maybe always desired to have some kind, like a distance between myself and my personal life, which maybe was broached by the first time, like me doing the Emperors, because it was such a direct response to my response to something.
Yeah.
And was just history and not science-based, which I was so, I mean, I really did them as a cathartic exercise and not as like a part of my work almost in my head. And then I was like, oh, actually they do fit into my work structure.
Right.
Even though they're not made up of like the plague or, viruses or subatomic decay patterns or what molecules or whatever. It's just a drawing of a man. But it's still about perspectives. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
do you feel like you have any, going back to part one, ultimately, speaking of circling back, do you feel like you have any sort of concise advice or wisdom to impart to artists who are maybe reluctant activists themselves, other than what you already said?
I guess, I was thinking about this morning on the way over, that like artists are kind of the best suited, or not the best suited, but very well suited to be activists, because we're constantly dealing with creating something from nothing. We know how to do that. We're not afraid of that. We're not risk averse, or else we wouldn't be doing this job, because it's not stable. We're trying to do this job. We have stamina, because to make it in any way in this crazy career I'm quoting,
right,
you have to be persistent and patient, because the thing, like, it could turn up when you're 90 if it ever turns up at all, but like we know how to show up and keep trying. And all of those skill sets are the same skill sets that it takes to enact large change.
Right.
So those skills, like we know how to show up every day and do something, even if it's hard and even if the rewards are not immediate. We also know that things take time. Like, for most people, creating, if not a one piece of work, but a body of work is a layer on layer. It's like a group of small efforts layered over time. Like it's the same thing that we have to do. And that if you make a call once a week, that's going to make a difference. If you put a brush stroke or a piece of a sculpture or whatever together, like one thing a week, by the end of a month, you're going to have something. Right. So that it's an additive process in the same way that making art is often. And that it just takes doing one thing. Like that's, I guess, is that different and reasonable thing?
Yeah, that is different.
There's resources out there that you can download, like 5 calls a day. It's this app that literally asks what you care about. You press on it. It gives you a detailed information about it. Then you put in your zip code. It connects you to all of the appropriate people based on your zip code to call. You press a button, it gives you a script, it calls the number for you, and then it asks you at the end, did you reach someone? Did you leave a message? Did you make personal contact? Or do you want to email? And like, I think that's one of the options. But like, it's so, there's so many ways that people have developed to just hand it to you. Right. That just to make one action is easy and doable. And we're good at making those weird little risks. So
yeah. So you mentioned a while back that we talked about your stage fright. How many people do you need to be speaking in front of for that to constitute stage fright?
That's funny. I've thought about this at all the meetings as well. Is that I tend to say nothing in them. My head is buzzing with things to say. Right. And some people are so self-conscious about it. And I'm always like, wow. That girl sounds nervous, but she's doing it, But if I get into the smaller groups, like in the subcommittees or like after the meeting and I'm standing with like 5 or 6 people, I'm totally fine talking.
So it's kind of like the 6, 7, 8 people. It's like somewhere around there. It starts to like.
Then I get like, or if you're like actively standing in front and it's not a conversation and you're like,
right.
I have this thing to say. That's super stressful.
Right.
And I think that's where the calling comes in, where it's like, oh my gosh, I have this very specific purpose that I need to have happen. And what if I don't do it well? But that said, like I did theater for my entire life until I got to college, and once I'm doing it, I love it. Same with Artist Talks. Once I'm doing it, I love it. But the day before and leading up to it are just like hellish. It's like terrifying.
Right. But that's why a podcast where there is no script and you don't have to necessarily have something specific to say. Yeah,
exactly. But I was nervous at the beginning.
Okay. But it wasn't like yesterday with the butterflies or anything, right?
Oh, no.
Oh, that's good.
Not that. No.
Good.
No, because it wasn't like, it wasn't like an artist talk where I had to like impart certain information or, a crowd. Yeah. So no butterflies.
You think we left anything out?
I don't think so. Do we? We didn't talk about my dad, but that's fine.
Oh God, yeah.
He always dominates luck.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe we'll have to do a bonus episode with your dad.
He's a real character, and and he also he will every time I'm down visiting him will tell someone that he put the paintbrush in my hand, which I disagree with, but he likes to own that. But he's a great dad.
Well, what I think we might do, if it's okay with you, is maybe we'll have a phone call that we devote to that whole story, which is pretty fascinating.
Oh my God, and he would love that. And honestly, I want someone to he needs a series or something.
Right. Okay. Well,
an HBO series.
I was
right. I want to see it dramatized in real life or in fake life.
Well, he could potentially be a guest on How I Get By. I don't know. I mean, if that still applies, or if it doesn't really apply
he's
anymore.
Living off Social Security
in
Mexico.
That counts.
Does that count? Yeah. But he's had so many lives.
Right.
So that would be an interesting how have you gotten by?
Right.
For 70 years.
Yeah. Right.
So yeah.
Okay.
Totally. Sharky. Yeah, I can't think of
Sharky?
anything else. Sharky.
His first name?
His Mexico name.
His Mexico name is Sharky.
Yeah.
As in he's shark-like, or?
I mean, I think that's appropriate. Right. There's some tall tale that goes along with the nickname, which then I found out was actually not really a story. I've been telling it to everyone as if it was true, and then last time we were down there was and then there was great story. He's oh no. that was just people were saying that.
Right.
But he wears a shark's tooth necklace. And,
oh, got it.
Yeah. Full expat
Stay
style.
Tuned for the bonus episode coming at some point in the future. Kysa, it's been great. Thank you.
Yeah, that was fun. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
And we're out. Thank you again to Kysa Johnson very much. It was great talking to her. And yes, we were in the same room. Might have been clear from the audio quality. So don't know when that's going to happen again, but big thanks to Kysa. Great to talk to her and glad to have her here in LA. We will claim her for our own now that she's here almost 2 years. And just reminding you that the website for the podcast is theconversationpod.com. If you hold on for just a second, I will give you a little anecdote about, speaking of LA, the Parrots of Los Angeles. Have you heard about the Parrots of Los Angeles? I want to tell you about them and my encounter with them recently. But first, this is a listener-supported show. Once again, your financial support via Patreon or PayPal is extremely appreciated. Thank you very much in advance for that. You can also leave a nice review on iTunes, which is linked through the site. You can follow on social media at Artist Podcast on Instagram or Twitter. And by the way, Instagram, can somebody explain to me how that works exactly? I've been on there a little over a year now, but I feel like it's less responsive these days than, or you, the followers, are less responsive than in past months. So I'm not sure exactly what's going on. If somebody wants to clue me in, that would be awesome. Also, as I mentioned at the end of part 1, in case you didn't hear, one way that I would be incredibly grateful if you could help the show is if you pitch me as a potential guest to a podcast that you listen to and think I might make a good fit for. If that host gets a couple of pitches from you guys, that would potentially lead to me going on the show. And why do I want to go on another podcast? It's to find more audience for this show. So thank you in advance if you can request that I go on somebody else's podcast. I know that's a weird thing to ask, and I hope it doesn't sound too, desperate, but I think it could help. Get me out there, get the show out there, get more listeners. So thank you very much in advance for that. So here's this story. I was jogging about a week ago, and it's this path that it's sort of a dirt path / tree median that runs alongside a boulevard. And now I had heard and seen the Parrots of LA before. They sort of travel around various parts of the city. I think not only the west side, but the east side as well. And I don't know, who knows what it depends on, but you can sort of hear them. You can hear them. They make themselves known audibly, if not visually, with their squawking, distinct from crows. So I had seen and heard a good batch of them in maybe 5, 6, 7 or so in the past. And so I'm jogging. I hear them. They're close by. I look over to my left and I see this this flock of them coming over this ugly apartment building, backlit by the sun, so I could not see their colors. But first came the first batch, and then came more and more until I couldn't count them all, but there were about 30 parrots. 30 parrots that flew over these 2-story apartment buildings. And as I jogged on, a little bit later, about a handful or so from that flock settled into a tree, and I got a closer look. I saw a couple of them. They are, in fact, green with red necks. And it was so satisfying to hear them and then to see just a few of them close up like that, as opposed to just the gray that they look like in the silhouette of the sun. And in that moment, I felt like, wow, I am just in this moment, and I do not care about all this shit that is going on right now. I saw the Parrots of Los Angeles in full and then close up. So that was a beautiful thing. All right, that's enough for this week. I hope you guys have a good one. I hope you're staying active, and I hope you are well until next week. Ciao for now.